"You're sure this is the guy?" The voice echoed from the Zelari command post, crisp and dripping with disdain. "Yes, High War Lady," replied the diplomatic AI, flickering slightly as if embarrassed. "All biometric scans confirm identity. Lieutenant Jonah Crew, 3rd Terrestrial Infantry, honor eligible. No criminal charges, combat decorated, currently eating a bag of synthetic cheese crisps." Virelia narrowed her silver eyes and leaned toward the viewing screen. The human in question was sprawled across a metal bench inside the neutral zone arena, one leg dangling lazily, the other propped up like he was on vacation. He wore standard-issue battle armor, scuffed, uneven, and unmistakably patched with duct tape-style repairs. A small drone hovered near his shoulder, projecting bad jazz through a tinny speaker. She tapped her clawed fingers against the control panel. "He's mouthing the song. Why is he mouthing the song?" The AI hesitated. "Statistically, humans under stress revert to familiar cultural patterns, often musical." "His cultural pattern is that?" Jonah took another bite of his crisps, then tossed the empty bag behind him, with a perfect arc that landed it inside a passing cleaning bot. "2 points," he muttered to himself, brushing crumbs from his chest plate. Virelia turned away from the screen. "This is beneath me. He did defeat the Neuraxis twins on Harthos 6, the AI added helpfully. "With a plunger and a bottle of fermented algae," she snapped. "That was not strategy, that was chaos incarnate." She activated her armor core. Plates slid into place, wrapping around her like a storm of light. Blue-white energy shimmered at each joint, the suit adapting to her every breath, every motion. The tall mirror reflected her fully armored figure. Sleek, brutal, elegant. Her long ears arched back, finely tuned for frequency scanning. Even among the elite, she was something more. Not just a warrior, but a living weapon sculpted through generations of bioharmonic engineering. She stepped out onto the arena platform, a vast circle of obsidian laced with hexagonal filaments. Above them, orbiting ships glittered like stars caught in nets. The crowd was virtual, beamed in across sectors, millions watching from different worlds. "Hey," Jonah called, noticing her approach. He waved as if greeting a neighbor. "Nice armor. Do those ears get satellite channels or—" She stopped 3 paces from him. "Do you intend to joke the entire time?" "Absolutely," he said. "It's either that or throw up, and I'd rather die with a smile." The central adjudicator drone dropped into view, its voice monotone. "Begin." Virelia moved first, a blur of motion, her foot slicing across the platform. Jonah barely dodged, twisting aside with a yelp. He skidded across the floor, tried to stop himself with his elbow, and somehow ended up back on his feet, arms flailing like a malfunctioning wind turbine. "I meant to do that," he panted. "Your species is a miracle of misplaced confidence," Virelia muttered, already moving again. Her strikes were poetry, each blow weaving through the air, calculated to land precisely where they would cause maximum disruption. Jonah ducked under one swing, caught the edge of another on his shoulder plate, then rolled awkwardly across the arena, landing behind a defense pillar. He peeked around the edge and grinned. "You're good," he called. "I know." "But are you left-handed good or only need one shoe good?" She frowned. "What does that mean?" "It's a thing we say when we're nervous. I am beginning to suspect your entire language is designed to confuse. That's also a thing we say." She spun toward him with a growl. "Enough." Jonah activated his grav boots, leaping over her and firing a short-range pulse from his wristband. The blast connected, briefly illuminating the energy shield around her. No damage. She whirled, caught him mid-air, and flung him down. He hit the platform hard enough to crack the surface. The crowd roared, some in awe, some in concern. He groaned. "That was not my best move." "You don't have best move," she snapped, looming over him. He reached up, tapped the side of her leg armor. "You know you've got a faint hairline fracture in this joint. Just saying." She froze. He winked. "I've got really good eyes." Virelia leapt back instinctively, scanning her suit. There it was, barely visible, a microscopic flaw blooming from an earlier impact. She hadn't noticed. She never missed damage. Her hands tightened. He scrambled up. "Look, we could just call it a draw, maybe grab a coffee. Do you guys drink coffee? Do you even have mouths under that helmet? She charged. He jumped sideways, skidding across the arena with a surprising burst of agility. The ground beneath him fractured as her strike landed a moment too late. Jonah somersaulted backward, landed next to a discarded tech panel, and yanked it free. He hurled it like a frisbee. It bounced harmlessly off her chest. That was supposed to look cooler, he admitted. You are not a warrior, she spat. You're not wrong. She advanced slowly now, not rushing. She wanted to see the light leave his eyes. He pulled out a small device. This is a phase shifter grenade. If I throw it at your feet, your kinetic stabilizers could reboot backwards. She paused. You're bluffing. He tossed it. It bounced, rolled. Virelia stared at it. Nothing happened. Jonah blinked. Huh, I thought it was a phase shifter. A puff of pink smoke erupted from the grenade. It smelled faintly of cotton candy. A tiny flag popped out. Happy birthday, it read. There was a beat of silence. Then, to Jonah's utter disbelief, Virelia laughed. It was short, sharp, clipped, but undeniably a laugh. He raised an eyebrow. You okay? Her expression darkened again instantly. You're stalling. Absolutely, he said, raising his fists. But give me some credit. I'm stalling well. She launched forward. This time he was ready. As she swung, he stepped inward instead of back, letting the blow glance his shoulder. He twisted, jamming a repulsion spike between the weakened plates of her side joint. It discharged. The armor sparked. She gasped, not in pain but in disbelief. Another crack rippled across her chest plate. Jonah looked up, breath ragged. I warned you about the fracture. She staggered back. Her systems blinked red warnings. Her armor flickered. The kinetic mesh failed. Then with a low hiss, the front panel shattered, split down the center, cascading to the ground in fractured segments. She stood in stunned silence, bare beneath the broken armor, breath visible in the cool air. Jonah lowered his hands. I didn't mean to undress you, he said, immediately regretting it. She stared at him, face flushed with something unreadable. You can't defeat me, human, she whispered, voice tight with wounded pride. Then she looked down at the wreckage around her. And then again, she muttered, I may have overestimated my suit's warranty. The silence lasted just long enough to become awkward. Jonah cleared his throat and shifted on his heels, glancing from the pile of shattered alien armor at his feet to Virelia's face, which had settled into a look best described as contemplating homicide, but politely. Her gaze flicked down to her exposed torso, now covered only by the sleek underweave layer beneath the armor, black, matte, and tight enough to look like it belonged to a catalog. He raised a hand. Just for the record, that was tactically necessary, not pervy. Her ears twitched. Okay, mildly pervy, but only in retrospect. She stepped forward. He flinched. Instead of throttling him, she plucked one of the fractured armor shards from the ground and examined the crack. The edge shimmered faintly, glowing with residual plasma energy. Then, with a calmness that felt out of sync with the moment, she dropped it and sighed. I should have killed you. I feel like that sentence has already been said to me this month, possibly twice. He offered her a protein bar. You hungry? It's got, almonds and sadness. Virelia didn't respond. She paced a slow circle around him, head tilted. The silence felt intentional now, like a test. He stood still, unsure whether she was calculating the angle for a revenge strike or trying to solve a philosophical riddle. Finally, she stopped. You targeted the fracture precisely, he shrugged. I notice things. Comes from years of getting punched by siblings who thought fair fight was a myth. You predicted my pattern of movement. Only after I got thrown into a wall, twice. Her brow furrowed. That suggests adaptation, reflexive cognitive recalibration. I did not anticipate you capable of such. She squinted at his temple. Are you cybernetic? Nope, he said, tapping his skull. Just standard issue meetup here. A little overcooked, maybe. She stared for a moment longer, then sat cross-legged on the ground. Jonah blinked. Oh, are we chilling now? Is this a sit-and-vibe thing? I must meditate, she said. It is customary after a failed honor match. Cool, cool, he said, sitting awkwardly nearby. Do you need incense or, like a playlist? She closed her eyes. He reached into his belt, pulled out a battered portable speaker, and pressed play. The synth chords of Interstellar Yacht Rock Volume 3 oozed out. One eye cracked open. Is this supposed to aid focus? It helps me focus, mostly on imagining I'm somewhere that doesn't involve you trying to impale me. Your music lacks symmetry. Your armor lacked integrity. That earned him a withering look, but also the corner of her mouth twitching. Possibly a smile, possibly a facial spasm. The drone referees were still hovering uncertainly, unsure whether to declare a winner or begin a commercial break. Jonah gave one of them a thumbs up. It spun in confusion and floated away. A light flickered on Virelia's wrist module. She tapped it, and a holographic screen appeared, messages from her command. She read them silently, lips pressing into a thin line. Bad news, will ya? He asked. They wish me to challenge the result, she said flatly. Jonah chewed a piece of his protein bar. You gonna? She didn't answer. She looked at him for a long time. You fight like a broken droid, he beamed. Thank you. That was not a compliment. You say that, but I hear respect in your tone. I am considering vaporizing your head. See? That's the mutual understanding forming. She stood, brushing dust from her uniform. I must return for diagnostics. My armor is a dramatic cautionary tale. She inhaled through her nose. I will request a rematch. Already? I haven't even finished my bar. Not now, later, when I understand what you are. A charming enigma wrapped in subpar body armor. She paused, then added, and your fighting style, where did you learn to fall with such commitment? He grinned. Combat yoga, real underground scene. Her ears twitched again. You're making that up. Absolutely. She turned away but spoke without looking at him. Next time, I will not underestimate you. He stood, brushing crumbs off his chest. Next time, I'm bringing a net. They exited the arena side by side. A camera drone zipped in front of them, capturing their faces, hers sharp and unreadable, his lopsided and smeared with something vaguely resembling synthetic cheese. The broadcast caption scrolled, Unlikely champion stuns Zeleri. Are humans evolving or just lucky idiots? In the human base's debrief room, Jonah slumped into a chair. His commanding officer, Colonel Meyer, stared at him like he'd just headbutted a planet into compliance. You won, Meyer said slowly. Jonah nodded. You beat a Zeleri elite, with snacks and sarcasm. I call it psychological warfare. You're a janitor's nephew who got fast-tracked because the general's dog liked you. And that dog had excellent instincts. Meyer leaned forward. She'll be back. You humiliated her. She cracked half my ribs. I feel like it evens out. Do not antagonize her. Too late. Across the station, in the Zalari wing, Virelia stood before her armor technicians, arms crossed as they analyzed the ruins of her suit. One of the engineers adjusted his goggles nervously. We believe the critical point of failure originated from a microfracture caused by kinetic resonance stacking, which should not have happened. She raised an eyebrow. Why did it? Possibly, this is only a theory, but possibly due to sarcasm? Disrupting expected combat rhythms? Another tech nodded quickly. Yes, human unpredictability is statistically dangerous. She stared at the remains of her armor for a long time. Build me a new one, she said. Stronger, lighter, adaptive, yes, high war lady, and reinforce the left flank. Understood. And make sure it's resistant to cheese dust. There was silence. Then the tech nodded, solemn. Of course. Back in his quarters, Jonah stared at the message blinking on his datapad. Combat honor status, pending rematch approval. He leaned back, whistling. Well, he said to himself, guess I better learn how to dodge better. Then he added, and maybe stock up on more grenades that don't throw birthday parties. Jonah squinted at the mirror, adjusting his new armor with the grace of a man trying to zip up a sleeping bag during an earthquake. The chest plate clanked out of alignment for the third time. emitting a polite but judgmental recalibration failure chime. Yeah, he muttered. You're not disappointed. You're just programmed that way. A maintenance drone hovered nearby, extending a mechanical arm helpfully. He batted it away. I got it, Gary. The drone beeped twice in protest and zoomed off, its posture somehow offended, despite lacking posture. Jonah stepped out of the fitting room, armor slightly crooked but otherwise holding together. Colonel Meyer raised an eyebrow from across the hall. That suit costs more than a low-orbit shuttle, she said. Then it should come with a dashing rogue setting. It does. We disabled it for your safety. Jonah tapped the helmet under his arm. How's Virelia? Still glaring in 3 languages? She hasn't spoken since the diagnostics finished. Just stares at her wall screen and pummels training bots. We've had to reinforce the floor. Neat. Meyer handed him a datapad. You've been invited to the diplomatic dinner on orbital ring 17. He stared at her. Me? At a diplomatic dinner? That's a violation of the Geneva Suggestions. You're a political figure now, crew. You've humiliated one of the Zalari's finest warriors in front of 12 billion viewers. I didn't humiliate her. I just creatively disassembled her outfit. Meyer didn't blink. Don't say that at the dinner. Orbital ring 17 shimmered like a translucent halo wrapped around the planet's upper atmosphere. Jonah stepped into the reception chamber and immediately regretted every life choice that had led him there. The guest wore everything from chameleonic silk to floating carbon thread capes. His armor, while technically fashionable in a brawler couture way, made him look like someone who'd gotten lost on the way to a robot wrestling match. A floating tray of glowing drinks hovered past. Jonah grabbed one. It changed color in his hand. You're holding that wrong, said a voice behind him. He turned. Virelia stood in a new set of armor, sleek, angular, charcoal with a faint violet sheen. Her long ears twitched once, the faint scar of their last battle now curled like an accent mark near her cheekbone. I wasn't aware drinks had a user manual, Jonah said. You are currently holding the ceremonial digestive in a hostile grip. That implies you're declaring war on the host family line. He stared at the glass, then gently placed it back on the tray. Well, that's one interstellar incident averted. Her lips quirked upward. Impressive. Only 3 seconds into the event, and you've already avoided annihilation. I do my best. A Zalari noble with 4 eyes and a monocle offered Virelia a nod as he passed. She returned it. Jonah tried to do the same but missed the timing and nearly spilled a different tray of snacks into the noble's cape. Virelia caught the tray midair. Have you always been this kinetically challenged? I excel at surprise falls, he said proudly. Gravity's just a really clingy X. A soft chime announced the beginning of the peace negotiations. Jonah found himself seated at a long, curved table next to Virelia. Across from them, dignitaries, advisors, and a very grumpy human ambassador whispered into translation implants. The main moderator, a 6-foot-tall bioengineered jellyfish with a monocle-like sensor pod, floated forward. Welcome to the Interplanetary Accord proceedings, it intoned. Our objective, determine a fair division of governance over disputed planet Glisa 581G. Beginning statements? Virelia stood. The Zalari contests human claims on the grounds of first contact precedence, strategic geolocation, and archaeological entitlements. Jonah stood next. We contest your contest on account of, we really like beaches. A long pause. Also, he added, we have a small colony there. Technically made of shipping containers, but still very homey. Meyer pinched the bridge of her nose from 3 seats away. Virelia didn't sit. Our traditions dictate that when 2 sides cannot agree, champions may be appointed. Their conflict, conducted under ceremonial rules, provides clarity. Jonah whispered, She's about to challenge me again, isn't she? Also, Virelia said, I challenge Lieutenant Crew to a rematch. 3 rounds, different arenas. The jellyfish moderator blinked its sensor. Accepted, it said. Jonah groaned. The first arena was a zero-gravity chamber shaped like a warped honeycomb. Obstacles floated in randomized patterns. Artificial gravity pulses kept everything slightly unpredictable. Jonah drifted in, armor magnetized for grip when needed. Virelia entered from the other side, already crouched on a rotating panel. She launched first, catching him off guard. He dodged just in time, bouncing off a drifting cylinder. She twisted midair, extending a blade from her gauntlet. "You brought a knife to a float fight?" he shouted. "It's ceremonial." He activated his grappler and shot sideways, crashing into a gel wall and sticking there like a squash bug. She spun toward him, weapon raised. He threw a smoke pellet. The smoke didn't float. It clumped in sad little gray balls and hovered like confused mushrooms. "That's disappointing," he muttered. She tackled him anyway. Back in the recovery pod, Jonah winced as the medic applied nanogel to his shoulder. "I don't think that joint's supposed to click like that," he said. Virelia leaned against the door, arms crossed. "You survived longer this time. I disarmed you with my wit. You disarmed me by ricocheting into a control panel." Semantics. The second match was held in the Thermal Rift Hall, a lava simulator with collapsible platforms and heat-resistant barriers. Jonah stepped in and immediately fell through a trap panel into a shallow pool of coolant. "You're doing great," said Virelia, standing safely on the ledge above. He spat out a mouthful of synthetic mint coolant. "At least I'm moisturized." She extended a hand. He took it. She yanked him up, only to push him sideways into a swinging pendulum trap. "I hate you a little right now," he called midair. "I'm developing fondness for your flailing." Hours later, lying half-conscious in a medbay chair, Jonah stared at the ceiling. "So," he murmured, "when's round 3? Virelia sat beside him, sipping water from a weirdly fancy alien straw. "Tomorrow," she said. "Terrain unknown. Surprise format." "Excellent, because what I lack in skill, I make up for in reckless optimism." "Is that what humans call delusion?" "Number, it's what we call confidence with extra seasoning." She regarded him for a moment. "You're not what I expected," she said. He looked over. "Because I'm charming? Or because I keep surviving out of sheer dumb luck?" "Yes." Jonah woke up to the gentle hum of a diagnostic bed analyzing his skeletal structure with what he could only describe as condescending efficiency. "Good morning," the medbay AI chimed. "Your humerus bone remains intact. Irony levels are at optimal combat efficiency." He groaned. "I think my spleen's considering an early retirement." "Your spleen is statistically unlikely to retire. However, it has lodged a formal complaint." He sat up, wincing. Nanogel crusted over a small cut on his neck that smelled faintly of citrus and regret. The medbay door slid open with a hiss that suggested judgment, and Virelia entered, holding 2 mugs. One was steaming, the other was smoking. He pointed. "Which one's for me?" She handed him the smoking one. "I'm going to drink this, and it's not poison, right?" "It's only mildly toxic," she said, "to humans with overactive sarcasm glands." He took a sip and immediately hiccuped blue vapor. "Refreshing," he coughed. "Tastes like ozone and poor choices." "Your biochemistry's confusing," she said, settling into the seat across from him. "Your heart rate spikes at the mention of combat, and also puppies. I'm a complex man. Violence and soft things make me feel alive." She sipped her drink, unbothered. "The final match begins in 1 hour." Jonah blinked. "We're doing this today." "You've already healed." "Barely. You have most of your original limbs. That counts. Some of them are rearranged." She stood. "You requested equal terms. This is part of the agreement." He sighed and stood, swaying slightly. "You know, I thought intergalactic diplomacy would have more paperwork, less being flung into simulated lava. We're efficient negotiators." The final arena was suspended in low orbit above Gliese 581G, built within a transparent biodome that allowed full panoramic views of the planet below. The structure looked like a shattered crystal reassembled with AI hubris and an unhealthy love for impractical design. Environmental conditions within the dome were randomized every 3 minutes. As the platform rose into the arena, Jonah saw the digital signs display the countdown, 000300. First phase, electromagnetic sandstorm. "Electromagnetic what now?" he muttered, stepping onto the platform just as the wind kicked up, stinging his face with static charge grit. Across the chamber, Virelia stood with her new armor shimmering like starlight, wrapped in malice. She was already moving before he finished blinking, zigzagging through the interference fields like she had a cheat code. He ran straight into a gravity pocket and somersaulted into a wall. The commentator drone overhead clicked on. Lieutenant Jonah Crew demonstrates the ancient Earth martial art of accidental cartwheeling. Jonah groaned. My ancestors are ashamed of me. Virelia landed nearby. You are unpredictable. I'm a kinetic enigma. You're a walking physics anomaly. He lunged forward only to trip over a floating rock. As he fell, he triggered a pressure switch on the floor. A holographic wall sprang to life between them, briefly shielding him from a plasma disc she hurled. Oh, hey, he panted, blinking. I did something right on purpose by accident. That may be your entire strategy. Don't knock it. Confusion is a form of domination. The environment shifted. 0, 0, 0. Next phase, bioluminescent fungal jungle. The sandstorm vanished, replaced instantly by thick humidity, spongy terrain, and pulsing alien mushrooms emitting rhythmic bass beats. The drone announcer chirped, "Welcome to Jungle Party Protocol Alpha." Jonah stumbled through the glowing undergrowth, slapping away a vine that tried to dance with him. He could hear Virelia moving nearby, each step deliberate. This place smells like disco and feet, he muttered. A giant toad-like creature blinked lazily from a moss perch, exhaled pheromone gas, and promptly passed out. Jonah waved it away. Same, buddy, same. Suddenly, Virelia dropped from the canopy, striking with the precision of a lightning strike dressed in judgment. He blocked with a forearm and spun to counter, managing to land a glancing hit that knocked her back half a meter. They stared at each other. She tilted her head. You're learning. I'm like a fungus, he gasped. Unwanted but stubborn. The environment shifted again. 0, 0, 0. Next phase. Zero visibility hall of reflections. Fog poured in. Panels lit up, scattering their reflections in a dozen directions. Jonah blinked as 10 versions of Virelia moved toward him. This is like a funhouse for anxiety, he said. Can you determine which is real? One of her voices asked. He pointed. That one. You always walk like you're judging gravity for being inefficient. Silence, then she emerged, nodding slightly. Correct. He pointed again. Also, that one's blinking out of sync, and that one's got her armor on backward. Ignore the test renders, she muttered. You built a decoy with a wardrobe malfunction? It was rushed. They clashed again, steel ringing against synthetic alloy. Jonah ducked, spun, parried a strike that sang against his shoulder armor. His AI pinged, armor integrity at 71%. Heart rate, heroic panic. He breathed through it. How are you holding up? She didn't answer. Instead, she spun low and swept his legs. He fell, rolled, grabbed a reflective shard from the floor, and held it up, catching her off guard with the flash of her own reflection. She paused. He kicked her knee. She stumbled back. He stood. They were both panting now. The announcer drone buzzed in excitement. Combatants now entering sudden enlightenment mode, emotional tension spiking. They circled each other. You don't want to win, she said quietly. I mean, I'd like to win, he replied, but I'd also like a hot bath, a vacation, and to eat a sandwich without being punched. She stopped moving. Then why fight? Because someone has to show your people that we're not weak, that we're stubborn and stupid and hopeful enough to not give up even when logic says we should. She stared at him. You confuse me. He held out his hand. Good. Let's start with that. She hesitated, then took it. The announcer chirped again. Combat paused. Diplomatic anomaly detected. Rival handshake engaged. Somewhere an ambassador probably spilled wine in shock. Above them, the arena lights dimmed, and the screen displayed a single line. Status pending. Possible resolution. Virelia looked at Jonah. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. But perhaps, she added, it doesn't have to end the way it began. He nodded. Agreed. Behind them, one of the mushrooms exploded in celebratory spores. Jonah waved them away. Next time, he said, we fight somewhere with chairs. A week after the final match, Jonah stood on the observation deck of Orbital Station Helix, arms crossed, helmet tucked under one arm, staring out at the green-blue swirl of Gliese 581G. The planet hung there, uncaring and beautiful, like a cat in planetary form. Behind him, Virelia approached with the careful grace of someone trying not to admit their boots squeaked slightly on polished alloy. She stopped beside him. "You're not brooding again, are you?" "I'm not brooding, I'm contemplating. It's like brooding, but with 20% more dramatic lighting." She glanced sideways. "You've got the chin tilt of a man who thinks he's in a movie. Let me have my moment. I'm monologuing internally. Would you like me to come back when the imaginary soundtrack fades?" He grinned. "Stay. You're my co-star now." They watched in silence for a beat. "So," she said, "the High Council ratified the new terms: shared custodianship of the planet, dual research outposts, cultural exchange missions, and a weirdly specific clause about interspecies cooking competitions." "I slipped that one in," Jonah said. "There's a dish called lasagna they need to experience." She nodded slowly. "I tried lasagna. My digestive system experienced philosophical confusion. Welcome to Earth cuisine. It's mostly edible, partly art, and sometimes a dare." She held out a datapad. "Also, this just came in. You've been officially promoted." He took it, blinked. "Captain? Well, technically, acting special liaison commander of interstellar reconciliation and punching." Wow, that's so many syllables. I'm not even sure I deserve it." "You don't, but you keep accidentally solving problems no one else can." He handed the pad back. "I accept the title on one condition." "Which is?" "Your next mission is to teach me how to land without spraining an organ." She smirked. "I'll consider it." A ping echoed from the corridor, Meyer's voice filtering through comms. "Captain Crew Virelia, report to Docking Bay 3. Your ship's prepped for deployment. The first joint team's heading down." Jonah tapped his comms. "Acknowledged, Colonel. We'll be there as soon as I convince my boots to stop being new." Virelia turned and started walking. Jonah fell into step beside her. "So," he said, "how's it feel to be famous now?" "I am not famous. My name simply comes up in war documentaries, talk shows, and several music videos. That's the celebrity starter pack. I've been offered a line of customized armor for civilian enthusiasts. Let me guess, you can't defeat me, edition?" "Yes." Jonah stopped walking. "Okay, now I want merch." They reached the hangar. The shuttle was sleek and compact, bearing both the human and Zalari insignias. A small crowd waited. Engineers, diplomats, a journalist drone hovering with faint excitement, and a child clutching a stuffed alien creature with long ears. The shuttle's door hissed open. Jonah hesitated at the threshold. "I used to think I'd just finish this mission, then go back to Earth, grow tomatoes, and occasionally yell at clouds." "You still can," Virelia said. "Yeah," he nodded. "But I think I want to see what comes next." She held out her hand. He took it, shaking it, then paused, gave her a look. "Should we, do a dramatic nod to each other before boarding? For tradition?" "I was considering a slow-motion walk." They tried both. The journalist drone spun happily in midair. Inside the shuttle, Jonah slumped into his seat. "You know," he said, "I thought you'd kill me the first day we met." "I considered it," she replied. "Thanks for holding back." "I didn't." "Oh." They shared a grin as the engines hummed to life. Gliesa 581G's surface shimmered in pale orange daylight as the shuttle descended. The joint colony was still mostly scaffolding and ambition, but the foundations were strong: reinforced durasteel, transparent bioglass, and a newly built greenhouse already full of plants that looked like they might sue you if you touched them wrong. Meyer greeted them at the landing zone. "Glad you're both still intact." "Mostly intact," Jonah said. "A few organs are on strike, but morale's high." She handed him a tablet. "First item, orientation with the combined teams. Second, security briefing. Third, opening ceremony speech." He paled. "Wait, speech? No one said anything about—" "You're the symbol of cooperation now," Meyer said. "You and Virelia, smile, say hopeful things. Try not to swear in Zalari." Jonah looked at Virelia. She shrugged. "Just use big words. Sound like you're quoting someone wise." He stepped up to the podium as the gathered crowd stared at him. He cleared his throat. His armor's voice modulator gave a dramatic echo he hadn't turned on. Right. South a week ago, I punched a diplomat through a wall. There was a cough. Meyer glared. I mean, it was ceremonial. Anyway, a lot has changed, and not just in the ways that show up on tactical reports or news feeds. I learned aliens don't think like us, and we definitely don't think like them. But somewhere between thinking and swinging swords at each other, we figured out we weren't so different. He paused. Also, your food is weird, but in a good way. There were a few chuckles, a few confused blinks. I think peace doesn't happen all at once. It's built in small, ridiculous moments, like surviving a zero-G knife fight, or sharing the last protein bar in a shuttle crash, or realizing the person you've been trained to hate has better comedic timing than you do. He looked over at Varelia. She gave the faintest nod. I don't know what the future looks like, Jonah finished, but I know I want to keep showing up for it. Applause broke out. The journalist drone spun 3 times and played a soundbite of triumphant synth chords. Jonah stepped down. That wasn't terrible, Varelia said. I aim for slightly above mediocre. She held out a small token, metallic, shaped like the emblem of the new colony. You earned this. He took it. Does it explode? No, he frowned. Disappointing. The sun broke through the clouds, casting warm light over the new base. Jonah glanced at it, then back at her. So, think this is the start of something? She tilted her head. It's certainly not the end. They walked side by side toward the outpost, the future unfolding ahead of them, full of strange stars, shared missions, and the occasional punch to the face, always ceremonial. The air inside Velharan's Grace always smelled faintly of ionized lavender, the sort of synthetic atmosphere designed by bureaucrats who thought a calming scent could soften decades of galactic bloodshed. It didn't work, especially not on Lyra Vejal, who stood in the corridor outside the diplomatic chamber, arms crossed, boots tapping a slow tempo of irritation on the polished alloy floor. She adjusted the sheath of her ceremonial blade and scowled. You'd think the humans would arrive on time, she muttered, voice sharp and smooth like crystal. Punctuality, it seems, is not one of the primitives' gifts. Apologies, Ambassador, came a voice behind her. We were too busy inventing clocks, plumbing, and sarcasm. She turned to see him. Darius Kale, the human warrior assigned to escort and protect the Marathi delegation through the summit. He wore the black uniform of the Terran Peace Corps, clean lines interrupted only by the jagged scar that ran from temple to jaw like a lightning bolt frozen mid-strike. His hair was silver, his shoulders too broad, and his smirk infuriatingly well-practiced. I see you're finally awake, Lyra said. Did your species finally discover coffee that doesn't taste like molten disappointment? I asked the galley for something local, he said. They gave me a mug labeled Kelftic Stim Fluid. It tried to scream its way out of my throat. Serves you right for assuming Marathi stimulants are compatible with human neurology. I lived, he said. Mostly. Can't feel my toes, but I wasn't using them anyway. She rolled her eyes. The summit is in 2 hours. Please try not to insult any of the dignitaries or mistake their spouses for chairs. That was one time, he said, and she was meditating in a crouch. Lyra didn't respond. She turned and walked toward the lift, and he followed, his boots clicking slightly too loud for her taste. The lift doors opened with a hiss, revealing a gleaming interior of brushed metal and dark glass. So, tell me, Kyle said as the lift descended toward the observatory deck. Are all Marathi born with that forehead wrinkle, or is that just you? It's a stress line, she said, brought on by exposure to humans. You say that like it's a bad thing. Kyle, I am a trained weapons expert and a decorated war tactician. I could slice you in half before the lift reaches deck 6. Good thing I don't keep anything important in my lower half. She gave him a sidelong glance, somewhere between amusement and dismay. He grinned. The observatory deck opened before them in a hush of motion, revealing the stars stretched out in brilliant, streaking arcs. The Meridian cluster, like a sea of molten sapphires, caught mid-ripple. Kyle stepped forward, jaw slackening for half a heartbeat before he remembered she was watching. I've been to over 70 systems, he said. Still doesn't get old. Even your people must appreciate beauty when it punches them in the face. We call that dating, actually. A low chime sounded. Lyra tapped her communicator. Vejal here. This is Cyril from the diplomatic wing. The Harkan envoy has requested a secondary security sweep before the summit. Something about the untrustworthy scent of Earthlings. Kyle lifted his arm and sniffed. That tracks. I'll handle it, Lyra said. She cut the line and sighed. You're staying here, she added. But what if you need someone to translate suspicious silence into 3 dialects of nervous human apology? I'll risk it. She was gone before he could offer a retort, her movements fluid, efficient, and annoyingly graceful. Kyle watched the door seal behind her, then muttered, She hates me less today. That's progress. Back in the corridor, Lyra moved with purpose, but the rhythm of her steps was off, slightly erratic. Something Kale said had lodged in her mind like a burr. Not the jokes, not the sarcasm. It was the way he looked at the stars, like they'd wronged him. She shook it off. Emotional projection, classic human flaw. In the security hub, she ordered a complete scan sweep. No anomalies, no threats. The envoy was being paranoid again, or they were testing her. Either way, it didn't matter. Back in her quarters, she reviewed the summit dossier, making mental notes about seating protocols, dietary taboos, and the acceptable number of syllables in a respectful Harkan greeting. Her console beeped. Incoming message. Audio only. Kyle. You left your ceremonial dagger in the lift, he said. I considered keeping it, then remembered it's sharp and you scare me, sending it to your quarters. Also, you're welcome. For not licking it. Click. She stared at the console. A part of her wanted to scream. Another part wanted to laugh. It was infuriating. The way he slipped past her walls without even trying. The way he seemed to know things. Like how she'd been having the dreams again. A human voice in a metal room, singing in a language she didn't recognize, but somehow understood. Calling her by name. Not Lyra. A different name. A name only her mother used when no one else was listening. She dismissed the thought and picked up her dagger. The ceremonial blade was Mirity forged, etched with symbols of lineage and honor. But on the back of the hilt, hidden beneath the wrappings, was something else. A scratched line. In Terran script. DK. Her breath hitched. Number coincidence. Coincidences didn't breathe. She opened a private comm channel, accessed restricted logs, war files, cross-referenced names. Darius Kale, decorated. Vanished from official records during the final Marathi siege. Resurfaced a year later, assigned to peacekeeping. No details, no context, no mentions of why or who. She shut the console off with more force than necessary. The dreams weren't dreams. The scent wasn't synthetic. And Darius Kale wasn't just a soldier with bad jokes and slow reflexes. He was a question. And Lyra Vejal had never met a question she didn't want to stab until it gave her answers. Darius Kale leaned against the briefing table with a hunk of powdered protein bar lodged between his molars and the 1,000-meter stare of a man trying to convince his digestive system not to mutiny. The screen flickered in front of him, looping another 3D model of the summit chamber's security overlays, complete with glowing red risk zones and annotations from someone who clearly believed danger came in triangle shapes. You'd think with all this tech, someone would invent snacks that don't taste like regret, he muttered, flicking the last chunk into the recycler. Behind him, the door swished open, and Lyra stepped inside. Her steps were quiet, but Kale had already tuned his ears to the sound of her walking. It wasn't paranoia, not exactly. It was more like the instinct of someone who'd shared a battlefield with people who looked like gods and hit like gravity malfunctions. You missed the morning tactical, she said. Someone had to monitor the taste integrity of the food rations. You're welcome. She ignored that. He looked at her, trying not to let the strange pang in his chest do anything stupid, like become emotion. I reviewed the summit layout, she said, walking to the other side of the table and tapping the interface. We'll be positioned on opposite ends of the envoy's retinue. If there's an attack, your job is to protect the civilians. Mine is to eliminate the threat. Comforting, he said. It's nice to know you're still planning to be useful after I get vaporized. Vaporization is inefficient. Most assassins use neural disruptors. Cleaner. Leaves a smell, though. He nodded solemnly. I'll wear cologne, something floral, to blend in with the corpses. She almost smiled. Almost. Her expression faltered just a little, and he caught it. He leaned in, squinting. Was that a joke? From you? It was an observation, she said too quickly. I think I saw your lips twitch. That was a grimace. No, I know your grimace. It usually means I've offended your ancestors again. She folded her arms and said nothing. The table projected the seating arrangement for the summit's opening ceremony. Diplomatic order, gesture protocols, emergency exits. Cal stared at the shape of it, an amphitheater of intent, built by people who thought symbols could hold history together. They're still expecting you to give the opening greeting, she said. They shouldn't, he replied. Last time I tried to greet a Zelthari minister, I used the wrong inflection and proposed marriage. She glanced at him. Did she say yes? She considered it, but only if I brought 3 goats and a certified mind map. Good trade. She was 3 meters tall and had spines. I said good trade. They stared at each other. The table flicked through data, oblivious. Cale shifted. The conversation was veering too close to something sharp, so he pulled it back with practiced ease. I still don't get why I'm even part of this summit. Feels like a weird token inclusion. Let's bring the old Terran so he can make everyone feel historically awkward. You fought in the war, she said. People respect experience. People pity relics. She didn't answer right away. When she finally did, her voice was low. Relics can hold truth, even if they're cracked. Kyle blinked. That wasn't sarcasm. That was something else. He almost asked, but her posture shifted, and she was back to protocol. There's a preliminary reception in 2 hours. No weapons, no translation implants. Just cultural exchange. Perfect, Cale said. I'll be the tall guy in the corner, mispronouncing greetings as intestinal surrender. Wear something without scorch marks, she said on her way out. Too late, he called after her. All my fashion's been through at least one explosion. It's my signature. The reception room was a botanical nightmare. Living walls pulsed with bioluminescent plants, each giving off a faint scent of ozone and wet moss. Floating translation drones hovered overhead like confused metal bees, switched off for the duration in the name of authenticity. Kyle was already sweating. Just smile and nod, he told himself, approaching a cluster of soft-skinned Zelranti with fronds for hair and glowing cheek ridges. One handed him a drink. It fizzed. He drank it anyway. Across the room, Lyra was speaking with a Rith ambassador whose body resembled a walking obsidian sculpture. She caught Cale's eye and raised a brow. He made a thumbs up, which she interpreted as, he's probably already said something stupid. He had, but only once. Maybe twice. Later, a minor scuffle broke out between 2 guests over ceremonial hat placement. Kyle stepped in, arms out, soothing words at the ready. This is nothing, he said. On Earth, we once went to war over pineapple on pizza. Perspective, people. The room laughed, except Lyra. She was watching him again, but not with annoyance. It was something deeper. Like her mind was working a puzzle that had suddenly shifted shapes. That night, Cal wandered the ship's lower decks. He liked walking alone when everyone else was pretending to sleep. Lyra found him near the observation window, seated with a ration cup and a look that didn't belong to someone resting. You're not supposed to be here, she said. Neither are you. They stood in silence for a moment. I saw you at the reception, she said. You were effective. I once diffused a border skirmish using 3 chairs and a bad impression of a Terran admiral, he said. Anything's possible. She stared out the window. My mother told me something once. She said humans endure because you forget. That's flattering. It wasn't meant to be. He smirked. We forget pain. Sometimes, not always. Some things stick. What sticks for you? The question froze him. It wasn't casual. He looked at her, and her expression didn't shift. Names, he said. Some names. Like. He paused. There was a girl, he said. Mirati, during the war. She used to hum this song. I never knew the words, but I remember the tune. Lyra didn't move. Her name was Sareth. Lyra's heart kicked in her chest. Why are you telling me this? She asked. He shrugged. You asked. And he left it there, walking away, the rhythm of his boots slow and careful. Behind him, Lyra stood in the silence, the old name burning at the edge of her memory. Lyra tried to sleep. Her neural rest mask played ambient planetary windstorms mixed with subsonic Marathi lull patterns, the sort of sophisticated sound therapy supposedly endorsed by meditation masters and war veterans alike. It did nothing. Her mind played Kale's voice on repeat. Her name was Sareth. The name had dropped like a detonator into her chest. She sat up and tore the mask off, muttering something impolite in 3 dialects. The console chimed softly as she called up the encrypted lineage registry, something few accessed without cause, and fewer still without guilt. Her biometrics verified instantly. She hesitated only briefly before typing, Sareth Ve Jal. One result, declassified record. Status, deceased. Cause, post-conflict complications. She scoffed. That was high command code for died quietly after we used her up. And then there it was, attached to the final entry. One child, name, Lyra, paternal identifier, redacted. She stared at the redacted line like it owed her money. Fingers hovering, she bypassed the basic security with an old override code her mother had once scolded her for knowing. Paternal identifier. Darius Kyle. Her jaw tightened, then unclenched. Then she laughed, a short, bitter sound. She stood and paced, furious at herself for not seeing it sooner. The resemblance was there, if you tilted your head and squinted through 25 years of mutual hostility and suppressed trauma. And of course it was him. The half-grin, the soldier's gait, the annoying habit of disarming entire rooms with 10 words and a raised brow. Her life had been a carefully organized archive. Now someone had spilled ink across every page. She stared at the console, then picked it up and threw it into the wall. It bounced, fully intact, and chirped. That wasn't very diplomatic. She left her quarters in a storm. I agree. That's why I stay in diplomatic ones. More snacks. The shuttle rattled as they broke through the upper layers of the atmosphere, friction glowing briefly along the windows. Outside, the planet's surface stretched vast and pale, dotted with shimmer glass cities and green arcs of cultivated flora. The summit would take place in the central spire, known poetically as the Hall of Air and Memory. Cal had once suggested renaming it the room where important people lie nicely, but the committee hadn't approved. Upon landing, they disembarked into a swarm of envoys, assistants, and protocol drones shaped like metallic jellyfish. One hovered too close to Kyle and offered him a complimentary brooch shaped like a diplomatic handshake. What is this? He asked. Symbol of unified discourse, it replied. It looks like 2 worms high-fiving. Correct. He pinned it on anyway. Lyra walked ahead, already engaging with a Tovalemian diplomat who looked like a sea urchin dressed for a ball. Cal watched her for a moment. She moved differently now, not softer, just aware. Of him, of herself, of history. The tension between them was no longer electric, it was magnetic, pulling but unsure of polarity. Inside the spire, the grand chamber waited with all its ceremony. Each delegation had a designated space marked by floating sigils. The Terran one had been downgraded due to past incidents involving soup. Kyle took his seat beside a slouching Glarntak minister who smelled faintly of cheese and oil. You are the human relic, the Glarntak said. I prefer retro-chic veteran, but sure. My mate collects outdated technology. She will find you charming. I'm flattered. Does she also like people who snore under stress? Yes, it reminds her of home. Lyra joined him moments later, her expression tightly neutral. They've changed the order of speakers, she said. You're first. Kyle blinked. Me? Yes. Did I lose a bet? They think your rugged honesty will set the tone. I once described a trade agreement as 2 ships colliding slowly while everyone smiles. That's why they like you. They think it's intentional poetry. He sighed and stood as his name was called. Walking to the center, he adjusted the mic sphere and cleared his throat. Ladies, gentlemen, sentient crystals, and respected non-corporeals, he began. I'd like to start by saying I'm honored to be here and that I've only insulted 2 of your planets this week, which is well below average. Murmurs. A few polite chuckles. We come from different worlds, some made of stone, some gas, some emotion, but we share one thing in common, a universal misunderstanding of what constitutes a chair. He gestured to his current one, which resembled an abstract interpretation of discomfort. More laughs, even from the Rith, who rarely acknowledge humor unless it involved fire. He continued, smoothly threading a line between sincerity and satire, landing each note like a veteran pilot skimming atmosphere. When he finished, the applause was real, if slightly confused. Back at his seat, Lyra leaned in. That was, diplomatic. I have my moments. Don't get used to them. I wasn't planning on it. Later, during a private intermission in the anti-grav garden, a space where delegates floated slightly to promote lightness of discourse, Lyra found herself nose-to-nose with a Merzan archivist who refused to believe she was half-human. It's biologically improbable, he insisted. Want a blood sample? She asked, holding up a finger. That's highly irregular. I also like strong tea and emotional suppression. Very human traits. Cal wandered over with 2 drinks that glowed faintly and smelled like citrus betrayal. Everything okay here? This one doubts your contribution to my genome. Cal raised his glass. It's a common reaction. I'm hard to believe. The archivist blinked, logged a note into his wrist pad, and floated off to recalibrate his assumptions. Kyle passed her a drink. To questionable ancestry, she clinked glasses. And regrettable genetics. They drank. Hers fizzed strangely. I think this is sentient, she said. Talk to it nicely. It might grant you a vision. They floated there a while, not saying much. The sky beyond the glass dome pulsed with auroras induced by local magnetics. Kyle finally spoke. When this is over, you should know, I won't stay unless you ask. Why? Because it's your life, your decision. I don't want to be a shadow cast over it. She stared ahead. You were never a shadow. I tried not to be anything. Well, she said, you failed. He smiled. Good. When the gravity returned, it did so slowly. Most delegates descended gracefully. Cal did not. Cal was in the training deck, locked in simulated hand-to-hand combat with a projection of a Zeltari mercenary. He was losing, mostly on purpose. The hologram swept his legs and he landed on the floor with a grunt. You really know how to pick a sparring partner, Lyra said from the doorway. Cal looked up. Thought I'd practice for the summit. If any of the ambassadors try to take my lunch money, I'll be ready. She walked toward him slowly. He stood, brushing off imaginary dust. You're not very good at holographic warfare, she said. I prefer real fights. Less flickering. More bruises. She looked him in the eye. He tilted his head. Something wrong? He asked. Her name was Sareth, Lyra said. You said it like it still hurt. He blinked. It does. She was my mother. His face went very still. Not blank, not surprised. Just still. Like a man waiting for a wall to fall on him. I know, he said quietly. She stepped forward. You knew. I suspected. I wasn't sure. I didn't want to push. You didn't want to push? You mocked me for 3 weeks straight and insulted my diplomatic strategy in front of the Harkin delegation. To be fair, your strategy involved arming the appetizers. They were ornamental. They exploded. They shimmered gently. He held up his hands. Fine. Tactical glitter. Still counts as a weapon in some systems. She stared at him, then laughed despite herself, then stopped. You left her. I didn't choose to leave her. Then explain. He rubbed the scar along his jaw. After the last siege, we were both listed as casualties. I was pulled into black ops, deep code stuff, no communication, no contact. I thought she was dead. By the time I got out, she wasn't in any registry. I searched. Years you didn't come to Mirrodin. Wouldn't have been allowed. Still technically listed as a war threat. You were. Yeah. And still got invited to wine tastings and treaty signings. Funny how war criminals become ambassadors when enough time passes. They stood in silence for a long breath. So, Cale said, I'm your father. Don't say it like you just found out you're a surprise ingredient in a soup. Too late. She paced. This changes nothing. Everything, he corrected. Not our mission. Number, but maybe how we see each other. She stopped. I still don't like you. Liking's optional. Knowing, that's permanent. I might still stab you. Genetics suggest I'll heal quickly. She turned, half exasperated, half something else. This doesn't make you part of my life. I'm already in your mission files and your nightmares. That's at least a B-list role. She crossed her arms. Why do you do that? What? Deflect, jokes, sarcasm. You use it like a shield. Says the woman who once threatened to dissolve a Harkan in a vat of diplomatic vinegar. Ceremonial vinegar. You wrote it in bold. She was smiling now a little. He saw it and stepped back. I won't push, he said. You've got your life. I'm a ghost in it. But I'm here. If you want to talk. She stared at him, searching for lies. Found none. She walked past him toward the exit. Just before the door, she paused. What was the song? She asked. He blinked. What? You said my mother sang a song. What was it? He hummed a few bars, soft and low. The tune shimmered in the air, wrapping around them like old light. Lyra closed her eyes. It was real, not a dream. She left without another word. In the observation bay, she found her mother's old locket in a sealed keepsake. A hologram played when opened. Sereth's face, younger, fierce, singing the same tune. Lyra sat alone, listening. She didn't cry, not yet. But for the first time in her life, she didn't feel entirely alone. The shuttle ride to the planetary surface began with a cheerful, automated greeting and a warning about local gravitational instability that sounded far too casual for something that could crush organs like soft fruit. Kyle strapped in with the lazy professionalism of someone who had seen worse. Lyra did it with the precision of someone who expected things to go wrong and wanted her limbs in the correct order if they did. We are now entering low orbit over Gentha Prime, the AI chirped. Please remain seated. Sudden ejection due to atmospheric friction may reduce social opportunities. Kyle snorted. Last time I was here, someone tried to kill me with a decorative weather vane. Lyra raised an eyebrow. Why? I accidentally insulted their sun god. How? I said their festival song sounded like a dying lawnmower. What's a lawnmower? Ancient Earth device, used to injure toes and destroy weekends. She shook her head. You should not be allowed in religious spaces. Do you always land like a drop toolbox? Lyra asked. It's a style choice. You're going to embarrass me in front of the United Systems Council, aren't you? Only if you ask nicely. She walked ahead without responding, but her shoulders weren't quite as rigid, and the tune her mother once hummed lingered faintly in her steps. The summit ended with less fire than usual. No food fights, no unexpected explosions, and only one delegate publicly accused of being an AI in disguise, which, to be fair, turned out to be accurate. Kyle considered that a personal victory. The closing ceremony was scheduled beneath the crystalline spires of Gentha's sun chamber, timed to coincide with the planet's tri-dusk, when 3 stars kissed the horizon like awkward triplets. Lyra stood beside the cascading light wall, her diplomatic sash slightly askew, and a faint trace of dark blue powder smudged across her collar. You've got spark root on your neck, Kyle said. She wiped it with the back of her hand. You could have told me before the closing address. I thought it was a fashion choice. Very avant-garde, like venomous chic. She rolled her eyes and adjusted her sash. The Rith envoy gave me ceremonial dust as a blessing. Rith blessings usually cause mild hallucinations. If you see a talking tree offering you riddles, don't answer. That was 5 minutes ago. Did you solve it? Obviously. Delegates mingled beneath the archways, exchanging parting gestures and encrypted contact nodules. The Merzan archivist returned, offered Kale a reluctantly respectful incline of the head, and handed Lyra a microcrystal. What's this? She asked. Your amended genetic record, the archivist said. I added unknown levels of sarcasm to your profile. He drifted away before she could decide if that was an insult or a diagnosis. Cal stood quietly. She glanced over. You're leaving after this, aren't you? Unless you need me to stay and explain sarcasm to the Merzan for another 5 years. I'd rather eat a box of dehydrated sea bugs. Then my work here is done. She looked past him to the transport vessel on standby. You're going back to Earth? Eventually. Might take a detour through the Havern Belt. There's a rumor the Pirate King out there thinks I owe him a liver. You do? I traded it for a cloak of invisibility. Long story. Bad trade. Silence stretched between them like a pause between lines of a poem no one wanted to read aloud. You were right, you know, she said at last. I usually am. About what specifically? I don't actually know who I am. Not fully. My whole life I thought I was one thing. And then it turns out half of me was a ghost from a story no one wanted to tell. He looked at her. You're not half anything. You're double. She scoffed. You trying to be poetic now? I've been working on it. Did it land? Barely. Story of my life. She turned toward him fully. But I want to know more. About her. About you. About what happened. I've got a storage capsule with 6 war journals, 2 secret recordings, and a sketch she made of you the day you were born. Her voice caught. She drew me? Smuggled it in a ration pack so they wouldn't confiscate it. Lyra stared at him. I want to see it. You can, if you promise not to laugh at my handwriting. No promises. They stood under the fading triple light. A call came over the intercom. Final boardings. He reached for his pack. You should stay, she said. He stopped. You sure? Number, but I'm less sure about letting you leave. That's practically affection in diplomatic speak. She smiled. Don't make me retract it. He stepped closer. This doesn't have to be fast or easy. You don't have to call me anything. I'm not going to. But we can talk. Figure it out. She nodded. You'll have to sit through a lot of boring policy debates. I sat through a lecture on interstellar fungus taxonomy last year. I'm immune. Fine, stay. Was that a command? It was diplomacy. Learn to read it. He grinned and dropped his pack. Later, aboard the orbital base, they stood together as the stars shifted into new constellations. Kyle passed her the sketch. She unfolded it carefully, staring at the lines, the signature at the bottom. She called me light, Lyra said. She called you home. She tucked it into her jacket. We'll build something. Not perfect, but real. He nodded. I've always been better at real. Then you'd better be good at staying. I'll try. No promises. Then we'll match. The intercom pinged. A new message. Lyra opened it. A new assignment. Joint diplomatic envoy. 2 names. Lyra Vejal, Darius Kyle. She laughed. You've just been officially tolerated by the Galactic Council. I'll get a badge. We'll get matching ones. With tactical glitter. He saluted. For honor and sparkle. They walked out side by side into the next chapter of something that didn't yet have a name, but no longer needed one.